All right. Welcome everyone to the September 26, 2022 Board of Trustees meeting for the Finance New Orleans Board of Trustees meeting. We'll start with the roll call.
Chair Edgar Chase IV,
Present.
Vice Chair Andrenica Morris,
Present.
Secretary Treasurer G. Wade Wooten,
Present.
Board Member Giselle Johnson Banks,
Present.
Board Member Charles Brown, Board Member Stephen Smith, Board Member Hunter Thomas. The quorum is present.
Thank you. We have no old business. We'll move on into the consent agenda items. That's the approval of the meeting minutes of the Board of Trustee meeting minutes from August 31st, 2022, as well as the Finance and Investment Committee meetings from July 19, 2022, August 16th, 2022, and the Programs Committee meeting minutes of July 25th, 2022. Everybody had a chance to review. I'll entertain the motion.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to new business, we have none. So we're up to the Finance and Investment Committee report presentation and discussion.
I'll take that. We did not have a finance and investments committee meeting. And I'll start by talking through the update and then move on to the financial status report. So inflation continues to be the topic of discussion in the market, despite expectations for a smaller month decline in the headline inflation. It actually surprised by jumping slightly to 0.1% month-over-month. Year over year, it actually moderated from 8.5 to 8.3, but it still was above the expectations of the market. Core index, which the core index inflation number, which is what the Fed is kind of keying on, which excludes food and energy, actually increased year over year from 5.9 to 6.3. Housing inflation continues to remain high. Wage inflation is high. That's putting pressure on the service inflation side. There's signs of the labor market tightness slowing a little bit. Supply chains are kind of normalizing. The commodity prices are continuing to soften. So, the Fed is continuing to increase rates, which they just increased 75 basis points. That was kind of expected. That was priced into the market. There's probably going to be more hikes just to try to slow down what's going on right now. So that's kind of where they kind of see the market is still running real hot. On the job side, as far as added 315,000 jobs in August. On the rate rose slightly to 3.7 from 3.5 in July. So that's going to be another number that's of course, bond rates across the board increased. You probably see that going into the end of the year, at least the end of the year, probably going into next year. Then on the local side, you did see a jump in the unemployment rate as well. 6.6 in July, the prior month it was 6.5. So it's another number. Stay abreast of it. So that's the market update. We'll move to the financial status report. Actual revenues year to date as of August of 223,000 to a budget of 535. On the expense side, we're at 1.2. Favorable to budget. The budget is 1.6. I mean 1.5. So that's 6,000. Move to the next page. This is our 13-month trending. You see, for the month of August, we had a slight jump in revenues That was driven by, we had a pilot closing in July and received those pilot fee in August. So that jumping off family revenue there. And then on the expense side, we had elevated expenses. Driven by auditing expenses. Stage. Balance sheet is pretty consistent, composition is the same. Real movement here is in cash, that just changes throughout the month, so other than that, everything is pretty consistent. Page. This is our pathways for home ownership portfolio, no movement here. We have our typical interest income on our accounts. So year to date, we're at 1,643, and then on the expense side, it's on 7,000. Page. Cash and cash equivalents is at 1.6. That is down slightly, roughly 71,000 from the prior. Questions?
Quick, and I don't know if we'll talk about this in either your report or programs. I just got an email that the city received like 24 million for affordable housing. In some capacity. I know we have two things that we're working on. One, there's a new grant possibly with the city, and one is an old grant that we hadn't quite gotten yet. That's still on the doubtful. How does that new affordable, can we tap into that 24 or whatever it was that just was allocated?
We're gonna ask. We haven't talked to the city about it yet. Funding that we've been going after with the city is coming from other parts of money. But we hadn't had conversations about ideas and preferences.
Thank you. There are no further questions. We'll move on to item number 6, Programs Committee Reports.
Thank you all. We did not have a committee meeting today. So we decided to, we're gonna do our update for the board as well as the public and talk about things. So the Community Support Fund, and Kelly, Dan, y'all jump in. I reviewed everything beforehand. There's no big surprises, no big changes. No closings. The sustainable pipeline, developer pipeline continues to, we're going to talk about that a little bit, about some of the things that we want to talk about, about moving some of these projects forward. Next slide. And yeah, so the Community Support Fund, I know we're waiting from the staff to talk about this a little bit later on in the next couple of months to hear from the staff about this. There is a lot going on with utilities right now. The city has done the extraordinary thing. The city council has done the extraordinary thing in halting all shutoffs of electricity for non-payment because of how high utility bills have been this whole summer. That's going to end November 1st. And so now there's supposed to be an arrears management program that's coming. But I imagine there's gonna be a lot of people that will need help come November 1st. Is this an opportunity for us to help them, or do we wanna put the Community Support Fund to bed and recycle those dollars to something else? So we'll be hearing from the staff their recommendations around that over the next couple of months. Next slide. Green Mortgage Program, we haven't done any loans. You've heard from Byron, the financial situation. And Chairman Chase, you asked the question about, how can we get in on some more affordable housing deals? That's exactly the question that I know the team is working on, and they're going to be bringing to us, because that is part of the problem. The average New Orleanian cannot afford the average home sale price in New Orleans, even with those prices dropping. It's especially with those prices dropping, because now another problem is that what it costs to buy a house, the house is not going to be worth that, and you get adding on to this spiraling insurance rate, right? So we've also got to talk about how that's going to impact the market. And again, the finance Authority, Finance New Orleans is in a position to be extraordinarily helpful, in my opinion, with addressing this, particularly with the green mortgage. The houses should be stronger. The houses will be more energy efficient and affordable and more sustainable over the long run if the team can get the tools that they need, the resources allocated, and that is what I'm hoping that they're going to be able to work through with all of the negotiations that they are undertaking. That's what we're hoping we're going to hear from them. And otherwise, we're just going to have to wait. I know Damon mentioned that they're actually working with their single family servicer to increase some capacity. And I think that there's some other resources out there that, with my other hat on, that we're hoping to help get to the finance authority so that they can make some of the happen without just waiting on public dollars. So fingers crossed on that front. But this is still the right path for the finance New Orleans to be heading down. This is what the people of New Orleans need. It's just, we've just got to get some more investment into it. And Damon, Kelly, chime in, please.
Yeah, point of reference for the board is that the single family and multifamily programs, while separate, they're very much so connected. Or I should say the developer program, home ownership and development. That's a better way of describing it. So the challenge that we're running into with developers is that the resources to do projects seem to be concentrated in low-income housing tax credit projects, which are the ones that we've been supporting with our pilot program, first 6 projects, or at least 5 of the first 6. And that's probably going to continue to happen. So most of the pipeline is concentrated in this type of deal right now. And we're trying to encourage developers to build more for sale housing. But that's a challenge because the capital price, the price of the homes, as well as the capital availability to meet that gap is just not there. So a lot of public dollars are needed. And again, those public dollars are concentrated on the multifamily side. There's some things that we can do on the buy side of the equation, like utilize the community support fund to support more green mortgage activity. That's one way to address it. And then continue to go after soft dollars, put alongside our mortgage product. Now you still got the cost of the home to contend with,
Right.
But at least we can start addressing the buy side of the equation. And a big target for our green mortgage campaign that's going to come out early next year is going to be existing homes.
Right.
And so we see an opportunity in doing more existing home ownership investment right now because there isn't supply out there and the cost of building new homes and buying new homes. It's not sustainable.
And we've got a lot of vacant houses that got to come down in prices.
Yeah.
And and there's people who want to build, but they can't get the resources. And the insurance piece is just can't be overstated. And the green mortgage product can help with that on utilities as well as provided the insurance commissioner can be persuaded to regulate
Yes.
the houses being stronger and more energy efficient and more resilient will make it so that the homeowners can own them. And there's also one thing we also have to talk about too is renters. If the landlords can do most of our landlord inventory is mom and pops, singles and doubles, right? While multifamilies are certainly what LIHTC cares about, our pilot program cares about. The inventory that is out there is mostly, people who own 1 or 2 houses. That is a house that could be, in theory, retrofitted with the green mortgage program, made stronger, utilities go down, the insurance goes down, and the renters can also benefit from this. So again, when I say that Finance New Orleans is headed where the city needs it to, that is not just whistling Dixie.
Yeah, one of the our Green Bank counterparts has a program, Florida, as a matter of fact, where they help small landlords retrofit their homes, particularly those small landlords that are partnering with the local housing authorities. So there's some opportunities out there that have been presented to us. We're still working through them. Mainly, this is going to be about starting with the existing homeowners, and then simultaneously, we have to keep working on all of the market issues like the insurance, the construction costs. Now interest rates are going up. And then you also have challenges, for example, with appraising a green home. So right now, there's a struggle to make sure that appraisers, when they go out and look at a home, that they're accommodating, or that they're taking into account all of the investment that has been made into the home and that's being factored into the value, because that also plays back into whether or not somebody can get a loan for this. So as we set up the program, we noticed that there were a lot of holes in actually executing this because the market just isn't ready for it yet. So we just have to keep pressing on, but I think the focus on existing homeowners can help create a spark. Help us start.
And build wealth, long-term wealth, because I mean, we're losing a lot of that. These homes are not becoming generational wealth, they're not getting passed on. They're also not helping to retain long-term native New Orleanians. So we're losing on, as a city, on a lot of fronts. And again, Finance New Orleans is ready to help. All right, next slide. So the Sustainable Development Program, like I said, we do care about the big projects, but they are also struggling with some of the same issues. But I think that there's more opportunity with some creativity and again, Finance New Orleans had already gotten a lot of these deals through with a good clip. So just gotta double back down. And then the question about getting more resources. The city I know is looking at this. You know, I personally have my opinions about the fact that we just need to be racking and stacking these deals and getting them done. And putting the resources at them, doing them 1, 2, 3 at a time, however many it is, and getting them done instead of spreading out limited resources over a dozen projects. You got to just kind of put them in order and get them done. Some of the money will recycle, some of the money will, and there's other opportunities that'll come. And getting more people stabilized is critical.
Are we like held up, are we bottlenecked right now on the projects because of insurance costs? I know
Yep.
construction costs. What, like, is there a plan to get us out of that bottleneck on that?
Well, we're working collaboratively with other agencies. Finance New Orleans, for our part, we're providing pilot financing.
Right.
We're actually experimenting in some ways. As you know, we're looking at a credit enhancement project right now. So
Right.
there's some things that we can do, but what these projects really need is software. They need gap. We don't have that. The city has that, but they have a limit. As Board Member Morris just stated, there's a limit on how much soft money we have in this community. So that is what holds up the deal. And then at some point too, you got to think about how much you want to subsidize, how much you want to give to one project.
Right.
And so that is the challenge when developers come to us. We're last money in, so before they can even get to the finish line,
Yeah.
they got to have all these boxes checked.
Yeah.
And that's the whole.
And they're working with the city right now to try to get some of the soft money.
Yeah, some of the older deals that have just been, I mean, there's deals that have been sitting for far too long. And again, that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
Just got to get those moving, and then they can assess the newer deals, more recent projects and things like that. And get them going.
There's a city has a limit, well, I shouldn't say a limit, but they typically invest $1.5 million per project. They'll do more or less, but that's the target number that they're trying to invest per project. Well, gap keeps going up on a project.
Right.
They don't need more than $1.5 million. They need a gap on one of our projects is upwards of $5 million.
Yep.
And that's specifically related to insurance, interest costs, and construction.
And it's only going to get worse the longer these projects sit in purgatory. You know, it might get better, but then there's going to be other development sunk costs that are going to rear their ugly heads. That's why, yeah, there needs to be like just prioritization. The deals that are the oldest in the pipeline that have been committed to. I mean, we're talking about some of these projects go back 7 years. That's, you know. And again, the units could have been built twice by now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and it doesn't have to just be the city. We also need to be talking about the state and with soft money and the federal government with some soft money. We're still recovering from Katrina. We are. See, we're still down 100,000, mostly Black people. We are not finished. And so there's those conversations that can be had. And again, with the infrastructure dollars and the Inflation Reduction Act funding, there's opportunity there. Just gotta get everybody teed up.
So we're just kind of waiting for that money to hit the.
Yes. But I think, again, Finance New Orleans kind of leading the way and showing some of these projects and with everything from the green mortgages, particularly looking at the smaller landlords, existing homeowners, keeping people stable, because that's the other big risk, is if we start leading people,
Right.
which we're getting dangerously close to.
There are two big opportunities for us on the federal level. I should say three. First one is the Inflation Reduction Act. There's, talked about last month, there's 27 billion earmarked for cities, states, and green banks. 20 billion of that is for green banks. So we're in line. There's some work that we have to do there, obviously, but that could help alleviate some of the challenges. We may not be able to move the whole market, but we may get in enough soft funding that we can move more deals at once. Yeah. We can probably kick in with some soft dollars. And then there are other pots of federal money out there, like ARPA, like the Small Business Investment Program. There's some other ones too that we're going to mobilize around that. We just haven't spent a lot of time. And then thirdly, a lot of this is going to be driven by the value of tax credits. So for multifamily, in my opinion, the federal government could make them more valuable because there's a lot of private equity sitting on the sidelines. And that's the only way they get to these deals is through tax credits. And there's a limit to how much you can have, how many tax credits you can have on your project now. Well, that's a lever that can be pulled, that can change it. That's a long-term fight, but that's something that we should continue to fight for with our trade associations. And then also fighting for the creation of a single-family tax credit, which there is not one right now. So if the developer wants to go out and build 40 homes or even 40 doubles, that could be 80 units, well, they got to make it a multi-family project just to make the numbers work, because all of the financing is calibrated toward and not for helping the creation of single-family home ownership. So there are some initiatives out there pushing on both of those ends. So we just have to stick at it and keep get beyond this moment. But this is a moment where we just don't have enough resources, and the market is so overvalued and overpriced that nothing makes sense. Yeah.
Good for us. Thank you, Damon.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair Morris. We'll move on to item number 7, Executive Manager Report.
So the report is not in the binders, but it's going to be pulled up on the screen in a moment. So starting off with some news and highlights. I mentioned last month the Coalition for Green Capital is lining up to be a key recipient of the funding from the Inflation Reduction Act that's geared toward sustainable investing. And that money is flowing through the EPA. Well, the National Green Bank Conference is being held this week in DC. So all of the green banks are getting together. This is going to be more of a working session than a traditional conference. So we've been working collaboratively in the background on an official plan to be sent to the EPA. And so we're going to meet in person this week to continue to collaborate and make that plan final. And then also talk about next steps, what we need to do with the EPA to make sure that we continue to be in pole position. We are in pole position right now, but there's still a big gap between when the president signed it and when that money actually gets spent. The good thing is we'll get a quick yes or no, or maybe, because the money has to be spent fairly quickly. It came out of Inflation Reduction. I believe it's by September of 2024. Is when they want that money to start flowing. So we're gonna continue to get organized this week in DC, and hopefully we take a big leap forward as it relates to our application with the EPA. In terms of us setting up our Resilient New Orleans Fund, which is connected to the green banking side, legal is helping us to develop a CEA between us and the city, which would be similar to the CEA that we have for housing. It's going to be CEA for the green infrastructure side, which outlines what we're empowered to do, as well as other incentives that we can take advantage of. For example, pilots. We can use pilots for a green infrastructure project as we use it for a housing project. But we need to get empowered to do it. And then, of course, the other funding that the city has earmarked for us. Work on the community impact bond continues. We do have some positive interest from some local, not local, but national banks, as well as local banks and some foundations. So we have some calls coming up to see if we can advance that bond issue. The biggest issue right now is credit. So we've introduced this to the market. We've had a lot of conversations, more than we care to have. And we're really looking for a financial institution that's going to step up and, not just give us money to give it to us, but help us solve this problem. And that's what we've been pushing as our message to these banks. Help us solve this problem. This is not just another transaction. So we're going to keep moving forward with some of those leads and working through what that credit situation looks like for us. So in terms of options, that could come from a bank, that could come from a foundation, or it could even come from the city or another government agency. So we're pursuing all angles right now. And there may even be a combination of those once we get to the finish line. So more to come. We also talked last month about the Louisiana Bond Commission, State Bond Commission, and how they denied a project from the city of New Orleans on behalf of Sewage and Water Board due to the abortion laws that were passed. And so that was resolved, at least momentarily. The State Bond Commission did end up giving approval. This is a line of credit for the Sewage and Water Board, which is important for them. But so that's good, but there's something for us to still keep an eye on because the Bond Commission and New Orleans have had a history.
Well, and there's an election coming up next year.
Yeah.
So that's never a good position for us to be in ahead of a statewide election.
Yeah.
A good chunk, I think it's a third of the legislature is term limited. And they're going to be replaced. And everybody from the insurance commissioner to the attorney general, governor, lieutenant governor are all going to be on the ballot.
Yeah.
Good and bad.
Well, if somebody wants to grandstand kicking New Orleans. I can't imagine who would want to do that.
It's good and bad.
I can't imagine anybody ever wanting to do that, but yeah, so.
So the next challenge,
Yeah. Let's get some stuff in front of us before you remember.
Yeah.
the next challenge, once we figure out our credit for the impact bonds, is getting past the State Bond Commission. And banks have already started asking us because they're reading the national news.
Yeah, that's right.
So they are expressing
Are we,
concern.
are we articulating though that beyond the theatrics, New Orleans actually wasn't countermanding the trigger laws as the police chief shared?
It's more about, it's less about those laws because they've seen this before.
No, but I mean, but the argument is like, oh, you're flouting the law, and it's like, no, we're not actually.
Yeah.
We're actually not flouting the laws. So they're,
Well, the thing is,
it's a deliberate misunderstanding.
the thing about it is what the market is saying is that historically, State Bond Commission has tended to stand in the way of the law.
Yes,
Or
it
they're
has.
gonna stand in our way.
I know, and they've done
Whether
this
these
before.
laws or
Right.
The senior senator for Louisiana, helped halt, we would have hundreds more we would have hundreds more affordable housing units if it wasn't for then treasurer John Kennedy, stopping LIHTC deals from moving forward that had been approved, and we're ready to rock and roll. So yeah, no, they're not wrong.
yeah, it's just an issue that we have to work through as we get to the market. More to come there as well. Lastly, we have a board retreat, our annual board retreat is coming up in October. Many of the things that you mentioned during your reports are the things that we're going to discuss at the upcoming retreat, namely action items for next year and financing opportunities. Something that we haven't done as an organization is do capital budgeting. We do our operating budget. State law does not require a capital budget, but in practice, it's something very good for us to have. And we've had an unofficial one that we use internally. But it's something that we want to make part of the official package. So you'll know how much of our assets are dedicated to the different funds, how much do we have in community support, how much do we have in multifamily, single family, and then where are we expecting to get that funding from?
And we can talk about some goals around setting goals around hitting numbers to make sure that the plan is going, even if we can't see certain pieces of it, we can see see other progress.
So between the capital budget and the financial model that we talked about during our last meeting, those are tools that will help us figure out what our forecast looks like and what we need to focus on. So we'll spend time during the retreat. Naj is going to send out a few polls for you to select some dates. So normally, if our board meetings on a Monday, we normally wouldn't do our retreat on a Monday. Typically, you pick a Thursday or Friday
Right.
that works for your schedule so that we can spend a few hours together. So Naj is going to send some dates and we just need your responses and we'll schedule.
And so we're thinking October, November at the latest, right?
Preferably October, because last year we did it in November. We were just behind schedule.
Right.
Preferably we do it in October, and then we come back in November with the preliminary budget.
Yeah.
That's based on that conversation from October.
Right.
And finalize it in December. So that gives us 3 months to do our planning.
Yeah.
Official planning for next year. And then Naj is also going to send a poll for dates in November and December, because our meetings, if you recall, they run up against the holiday time.
Right, so we need to shift those around. Yeah.
Next slide, Naj. And in terms of roadmap highlights, this hasn't moved much over the last 30 days. We're focusing on the launch of the Resilient Fund, which I just spoke about. We're working on the CEA with the city so that we can get their empowerment as well as some initial funding. And then, of course, working with the National Green Bank to take care of the federal side. So those things are ongoing. Our first deal that was, our first bond deal, I should say, that the board approved earlier this year. That one is still on hold. This is one of the deals that we had it up here because it was our first one, but this is one of the deals that have been sidelined because of the construction costs, insurance costs, etc. So we'll keep you posted there. We have our first credit enhancement project in underwriting right now. And essentially what that means is we as an organization have the ability to stand behind bond issues. Going back to the credit, we need our own credit to issue bonds, just so developers that want to access the bond market, same thing. And most of the bonds from local developers or smaller developer projects are bought by local banks. And the larger deals tend to have FHA, Freddie Mac. So we're not necessarily proposing to credit enhance the whole market, but particularly the smaller deals that don't have much of an opportunity to get that private credit enhancement.
And what will be like the upper cap on
Well, we've talked to a number of local banks And at most, what they're telling us is that we need to set aside 20% of the bond issue in the loan loss reserve through construction. So if the deal was $1 million, we would need to set aside 200,000 on behalf of that project until it became stabilized. And that would actually help the bonds be sold. So the bonds normally can't be sold without some kind of guarantee. So our balance sheet will function as guaranteed. Of course, the economics that will flow back to us. For doing that.
And I guess on the internal side of the program, are we looking to fund up to 2 million or 1
Certain
million?
amount,
Yeah.
Yeah, there are, I think we put it, the total development cost limited at 25 million. So that means the bond deal is probably, most will do a bond deal of 15 to 17 million, somewhere in that range. So that means the upper limit of our credit enhancement is 5 million. Now, we may not do it now, but that's what we're going out to get the funding for. And then there are some other foundations that we talked to partner with us. So for now, we're gonna look at smaller deals that we can handle.
Yeah.
And just get our feet wet. And well, ideally, we do a few of these a year. Once we have enough funding to where we're comfortable, because the market needs this big time, big time. And this is important because this is gonna help Black developers, emerging developers get into the bond market. Bond market is very, very difficult to access, particularly if you're an individual. I mean, look at us, we're a government agency and we have our own troubles just trying to get into the bond market. So imagine what they can be for a developer that's trying to pull together some community impact. So that's another way that we can use our capacity to help make deals work. So you'll see our first stab at that coming down the underwriting pipeline very soon. And then, of course, we're still working on closing our impact bond issue. We're coming up toward the end of the year. But we're going to keep doing as much as we can to get as much done. But we keep telling the market we're ready to be funded right now. We did the homework. They asked us to go out and do a plan. We got a bunch of grants to do the planning. We sent all out. We sent out the information in June. It was a lot, but that's what they asked us for. And you wanted to know that we were prepared. So we're going to keep fighting to actually make something happen. We did our part. And we're going to continue to do our part, but we need the private market to step up too. Help us solve this problem. So that's the work that will continue through the rest of the year, and then we'll talk about action items at the board retreat next year. Any questions from the board?
I've got a question. You talk about like individual credit tangent here, but my recollection some time ago is that look at like who can access this sort of funding. It tends to be like heads of households, single heads of households. So I'm sure there's a formula that applies. I guess the question is you've got a single head of a household who's trying to be looking at his or her credit score. Versus a couple, is it more difficult to get credit? Easier? I don't know. I just remember there was a disproportionate in Woodlands Parish percentage of single heads of households, which is fine. That's the population we're trying to service. But I'm just wondering how that plays into kind of some of the planning.
Well, a few years ago, some of the rules were adjusted by the servicer and FHA/Freddie Mac to allow families to apply so that they can enhance the credit. Well, what I'm seeing from the different banks is that they're going on paper. They're looking at paper. So if you don't meet the criteria on paper, they're not even trying to work. Trying to work with you today. And that's what banks were known for, community banks, and you can help people get beyond situations, but that's not happening in today's market for different reasons. Nationalization or consolidation of the banking industry on a national level has an impact on us. Economic conditions, all those things are having an impact on us being able to get people qualified for mortgages. So this community impact bond that we're stressing, part of that funding is going to go towards opening up the market for lower credit scores. And when I say lower credit scores, I'm talking 600 to 660. And FHA allows us to go as low as 580. Freddie Mac a little higher, but 600 to 660, those are still considered decent credit scores. But we can't even serve that population, which is most of New Orleans, because of credit requirements by the national banks up here that are on paper, and they're not taking into account relationships or need, community impact.
It's still like 680.
660.
Yeah.
660.
And also, everybody uses credit scores, but it doesn't mean anything. We just keep defaulting to it. We keep
Yeah.
ignoring that piece of this, that it's not a really good predictor. It's, everybody's just settled on it. And that there, and again, what ends up happening is continuing to lean into these systemic barriers. The people who need these programs the most, who deserve these programs and could utilize these programs, they keep getting ignored. That's who we keep leaving out in the cold. And so, you know, can't keep doing that.
And that's the good thing about the green banking movement.
That's right.
Some of those green banks are using alternative underwriting methods, which we may be able to adopt and leverage their platforms. But on our housing side, there's such a complex infrastructure that you need servicers, and they dictate what we can and cannot do. So one of the ways to alleviate it, and we asked them, how can we do this? It's always bringing more money to the table.
Yeah.
You need more
Yeah.
money. So-
Golden rule.
So
He
that's
who
what we're
has the
telling.
gold makes the rules.
Yeah. That's what we're telling the investors out there, or the potential credit enhancers, is that we can't follow through on our mission without having the capital to do it. So, you know, we need creative ways of getting capital. Of course, we can get some federal dollars and some local dollars, but we need to move right now.
Yeah.
The private sector has the money. There's $40 billion of deposits in all these parishes. The money is there. And most of it isn't being used here.
That's right.
So we're gonna keep fighting them, pushing them, aggravating them until they do something.
And the fact of the matter is that if this something doesn't give, again, I mean, you know, God bless the folks of Florida. God bless the people of Puerto Rico. We could not and cannot take another incident here. And that's how precarious we are. Because the people aren't stable.
Yeah.
And so again, the $40 billion is gonna go away too. I mean, that's what's at risk here. And so they've got to start making some real investment to keep those resources here, to keep the people who generate that money. That's creditors. I mean, that's depositors. That's not, you know, offshore banks and stuff like that. That's people who live here, who have their money in local banks, and it's not helping them.
Any other questions? That concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. Just looking forward to the work we have ahead. The retreat's gonna be good. We keep planning, strategizing, and let's keep doing our work that we need to do to help out these situations that's ahead of us. And I think we're gonna get there. Moving on to other business, we have none. Any public comment?
No public comments at this time.
No public comment. Any other business? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion or approval for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
I
All right, well, our next meeting is scheduled for October 26th, 2022.
or maybe not.
As these doodle polls come out. so
Yeah,
we'll
I'll
update you.
try to get those closed out this week.